first diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. Just to give you a reference, the Alzheimer's Association did not exist yet. There was no such thing as respite services for families who needed it. There were no home health agencies in the area, and we were really on our own. So I was 7 when she was diagnosed, and very quickly, after a number of mishaps in her home, it became apparent that she couldn't live by herself in her home anymore and had to come live with our family. As a parent now, I can certainly appreciate what my own parents must have been going through at the time, and my mother having just started working full-time for the first time, juggling 3 children, her job, and now her mother living with us with Alzheimer's disease. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with Alzheimer's disease. Sometimes they say that the difference between Alzheimer's disease and memory loss is that when you have memory loss, maybe you forget where you put your keys, but when you have Alzheimer's disease, you forget what a key was intentioned for. So she needed full-time care, and she would come to our house every night, but I did not see her through the eyes of an adult, of seeing this person that we love suddenly receding. I saw my grandmother as the funnest, the coolest, the most mischievous person I had ever seen, because she broke every rule my parents had for us. We would make a tray of cupcakes to bring to school for a birthday, and before the morning came, my grandmother would eat them all. And this is very common because someone with Alzheimer's disease will do what they called sundowning. She would be getting up repeatedly all night, but wouldn't remember she had been. So most of these deeds happened in the middle of the night. Another favorite of hers was going into my parents' room and peeling their eyes open and then yelling that they were late for work and they had to get up at that moment. And it would finally get my grandmother calmed down and out of the room, and 15 minutes later the same pattern would occur. So I was really leaned on very heavily as a young girl to take care of my grandmother. And while I didn't understand it at the time, as an adult I can understand that at some point of pulling open the eyes, of having to go to the store to get the extra cupcakes, of all these other ways that living with someone with Alzheimer's really alters your life, my parents finally needed that respite. So next thing I knew, I was on my way to rural Pennsylvania with my mother's brother, my uncle, as well as my brother, my sister, and my grandmother. My parents were not there, and like I said, as an adult, I can appreciate they needed a break. But we went to an apple orchard with my uncle, who really was not prepared to take care of someone with Alzheimer's disease. And my grandmother took a lot of pleasure in the simplest things. I see this mat in front of me. She would have looked at that for hours and would have told us at least 200 times, "Have you seen this mat? Isn't it beautiful?" And she would do this with a lot of things. That day in the apple orchard, she did this with an apple. And I just remember she had this blue cardigan she always wore with the little tissues wrapped up in her sleeve, and she picked this one little apple. And about 100 times throughout the day, she polished this apple, and then she would say, "Isn't this the most beautiful apple you've ever seen?" And we would keep talking about the apple as we were apple picking. Finally, my uncle came up to us, and she showed him, she's like, "John, look at this apple I picked." And he picked it up, and he turned it around, and he saw a wormhole in the apple, and he said, "Oh, Mom, you don't need this," and he tossed it away. And as a young child, seeing the dignity that my grandmother was losing in this disease, I was so angry at my uncle and so annoyed that this was happening to someone that I loved. So that night we went back to my uncle's house to spend the night, and I was, of course, having to room with my grandmother. I was the only one who really knew how she was at nighttime, because I was often up with her. I would watch her throughout the night, and I knew her patterns, so we felt that I would be the best person with her. And I remember my grandmother getting ready for bed. She had one of those, I don't know what it was like a little nylon mesh cap or something that she would wear over her hair to go to sleep. She put that on, she put her clothes away, and then all of a sudden, on the dresser in that room was the apple. It was the apple with the wormhole in it. And I love that about my grandmother. She had such an influence on me in my life. I picked the I picked the field of gerontology to go into after having lived with her for so many years, but more importantly, I picked her name for my daughter. So that's your grandma. Well, actually, that's my grandma. That's your great grandma.